2019, Sam Harris did a Making Sense podcast episode on universal basic income. At the time, he claimed what better way to introduce it than through presidential candidate Andrew Yang. Yang was a longer than long shot when he appeared on Sam Harris's podcast, which probably worked in his favor, because I could focus on the concept of universal basic income without all the distractions from the political sphere. Someone close to me who's educated in tech and I've been discussing the revolution that's probably going to happen in our lifetimes. As an electrical engineer myself, I see and experience the trends every day. The pace of change and pace of change in technology in particular is something we've never seen before, and our way of life is changing so fast that our archaic governmental systems are barely able to keep up. Our archaic governmental systems probably were out of date even a couple of decades ago, but in the next couple years, I think a major revolutionary shift is going to occur. The question is whether this shift is going to work for people, the average people, or not. I sound very fatalistic because in some ways I am. To integrate my personal experiences into this, I just talked about my latest travel achievement, which is exploring my 101st UN country. I have a unique perspective on the ground that is different from a media narrative and different from an internet narrative. With my extensive experience abroad, I honestly do think that massive shift is already occurring, and again the question is whether it's going to be working for the average person or not. Andrew Yang champions what he calls a freedom dividend, which is $1,000 per month for every American adult. Now, why would this affect me as a Canadian? I think, despite the last couple of years, the US is still seen as somewhat of a thought leader, and if we can elect a candidate in the US that has a forward-thinking approach, we have a better chance of having this shift work out in favor of the average person. I'm going to briefly describe the shift and do what I call Super Sunday. I believe in the ideas enough that I'd like to spread them in a way that could potentially help Andrew Yang's chances. I've no idea whether I'm truly helping or whether I'm just stroking my own ego. We'll see. If you've been to a grocery store or fast food restaurant, you'll notice things have changed. Instead of interacting with a human to place your order, you're now interacting with a screen. In many ways, this is actually a big improvement. When I was in Dubai on my recent trip, this is my first time interacting in detail with one of these menu screens. Normally when I'm at home, I'd be cooking for myself, but when I'm traveling abroad, I have a tendency to eat out. So this is actually one of the first times I had the time to interact and experience one of these menus in full. I'm the type of person who likes to make informed decisions. I realized when interacting with this menu that I'd never really been informed on all my full menu combinations. Okay? The touchscreen was very intuitive, and it did things that I never knew we could do. Adding and subtracting ingredients, side dishes, combinations that were not apparent on the physical menus that they place above our heads. In fact, I never even thought of the kinds of combinations possible until I interacted with a menu in full. I think I ended up with some double patty, which I would then take the second patty and make my own burger with some leftover buns I had, and guava juice from McDonald's. This sounds like a frivolous, mundane example, but I thought that the automation was a great improvement on talking to someone, because those people have never given me an indication of the choices that I could have had. And even those physical menus cannot represent the combinatorics that are possible. But machines are great at offering that type of information in an easy to understand way. It opens up your options to have exactly what you want. In many ways, we should be applauding these improvements. But the natural question is, what happens to the person who used to take our order? They're out of a job. Call center workers are going to be out of jobs. Truck drivers, when they're superseded by robot trucks, are going to be out of jobs. What do we do about those people? On first glance, Andrew Yang might look like he's just throwing money at a problem. And he is. The theory is, if you have $1,000 a month, you're almost right at the poverty line, so it should be enough money for you to have basic necessities met. We're going to have that the more time goes on, because people are going to be automated away. The other that Trump always likes to stoke fear against is not the immigrant, it's the robot. The faster people start realizing this, the faster they can have some solutions. Andrew Yang's freedom dividend is basically a temporary transition solution. for what the greater problem will be. The greater problem is lack of meaning more than not having a job. In this system we've grown up in, we are browbeaten into us that we are only worthwhile as outputs, as capitalistic outputs, as labor outputs. We've built entire identities and value systems based on our usefulness as workers, or our usefulness as economic outputs to the system. Even yesterday, when I was talking about travel, and every time I talk about travel, I always have a section in there about finding yourself, finding your value system, finding your own self-worth outside of all the typical cockamamie bullshit that society tells you. Society tells you you're only worthwhile if you go to school, if you get a job, if you marry, if you have children, if you do this, if you do this, if you do this, in that formulaic way. I'm a perfect example of someone who's very confident in my own worth as a human being because I built it for myself, ground up, ignoring all of those things. I started when I was a child with the grades and the jobs because I had no better creativity at the time. It was only when I was face to face with death a decade ago that I realized I'd done nothing for myself to make me happy, and my 10 years of adventure traveling has partially been a self-worth journey. Andrew Yang, as a presidential candidate, recognizes that there's going to be a war on meaning, life meaning, that more greatly exceeds the job losses. And the faster we can implement that freedom dividend to at least partially resolve people's basic needs, the more we can then focus on the real problem, which is the problem of meaning. Now, I'm going to actually start researching what I can do for Yang. I've been following him for almost a year now, since Sam Harris, but I've never really done much for him. First of all, because I felt that would be a bit of a misstep for me as a Canadian. I should focus on Canadian politics first. We had an election in 2019. I voted for Justin Trudeau. This is the second time I voted for him. I voted for him not necessarily because I felt he was the best candidate, but I am a progressive, and his party was the most likely to be in power. I've traditionally been an NDP / Green Party type of voter, but I realized in the recent elections that I was in essence splitting off my vote and handing over governments to the regressive conservatives. Now, luckily for us, our regressive conservatives are still probably better than the Republicans in the US, but still, a party that's so behind the times in terms of social issues and environmental issues, I just had no desire to help them. And me splitting off my vote to the NDP and Green Party was in essence helping that. Now that our Canadian election is done and Justin Trudeau has his minority government, I'm going to take off this Super Bowl Sunday to help my brethren Andrew Yang, because I think he's probably one of the only opportunities we're going to have to save the middle class. I think without him, we're done. Now, the happy thing for me is that I'm a child-free anti-natalist, so I don't have to have this world work out for me for generations to come. I only care that it stays okay long enough for me to enjoy all of my fanciful adventures. In many ways, I've actually already done everything I've wanted to do, and I'm in a good place. If someone were to tell me, that's it, your time's up, you're off this planet now, I'd be alright with it, because I have no regrets. Same for the people around me that I love the most, the two people that I love the most. They've also done the same thing. No regrets. It's the best way to live. So in some ways, I come at it from not having much to lose in the circumstance, but still thinking that because I'm in this fortuitous position, I can take out a little bit of time to maybe try to extend the lifespan of this Earth long enough for me to go to space. That's the only thing that maybe more time would buy me. Maybe. I know that Virgin Galactic and others have unveiled what they call stratosphere flights, starting at a couple tens of K to 100K. I see that price coming down to something more reasonable within the next little while. So if I can hang around long enough for that, I think that would be the only thing left for me to do that I really want to do. I'll start with my research now into how I can help my bro Yang. I'll talk while I'm doing it. So I've just searched up something very simple. Phone bank for Yang. Phone bank for Yang on the Yang 2020 website. Yang 2020 website. They have something called Call for Yang. I have no idea if I can even do this, but since, as you can tell, I'm a talker, I might as well put my big mouth to good use, hopefully. The best thing you can do to help Andrew win is to contact voters in the early states. Follow the 3 steps below to get started making calls to voters in the early states. Step 1. Read our calling handbook and watch our online calling training video to learn how to make calls for Andrew Yang. Okay. Yang 2020 calling. No voter ID today. We are making GOTC and persuasion calls into Iowa. It's game on. Yang, every Iowan. Let's go. Introduction, hours of operation, logging onto the dialer, voter ID calling, how to make your voter ID calls from home, GOTC and persuasion calling, how to make GOTC and persuasion calls from home, additional information. Introduction. At this critical point in the race, the campaign is focused on 2 forms of phone banking: voter ID calling and GOTC plus persuasion calling. The goal of the voter ID is to determine who the voter caucuser is supporting for president and where Andrew Yang ranks among their top candidates. This is critical information that helps the ground team. If you are a first-time phone banker, or you are not confident in your persuasion abilities, you'll want to make voter ID calls. That would be me. I'm a first-time phone banker, although I am confident in my persuasion abilities. The goal of the GOTC and persuasion calling is to follow up on leads who are warm or undecided towards Andrew Yang, and convince them to support him and to show up to caucus for him on February 3rd. The Iowa caucuses are on February 3rd. Hours of operation, Monday through Saturday, 11 a.m. Eastern to 10 p.m. Eastern. Sunday, 12 p.m. Eastern to 10 p.m. Eastern. Right now it is what time? 12 a.m. Pacific. So I am within the hours of operation Sunday. Logging on to the dialer. Watch our Through Talk dialer tutorial. Okay. I am watching the setup.
What is going on, Yang Gang? My name is Dan, and our goal today is to successfully log into the Yang 2020 phone bank dialer. Maybe this is your first time on the dialer, maybe you're having technical issues, whatever it is, let's solve those problems right now. Alright, let's go. So we're going to provide you with a link to a login portal on a website called ThruTalk. ThruTalk is a service that allows us to auto-dial voters on our list, and it's the interface with which we'll enter voter identification data. So what I'm going to do is just read through their step-by-step guide, and then I'm going to add some extra, rather critical commentary, alright? Number one, in order to make calls in ThruTalk, you will need either a laptop, desktop, or a tablet. You cannot use iPad at all, so if you're on your iPad and having trouble with the dialer, that's your problem. See if you can get access to a computer or an Android-based tablet, which is what they recommend. Also, on a related point, you cannot use Safari regardless of...
Okay, that's the first thing I'll have to do. I'll have to access a laptop, which is being used right now. So, that's a little bit of my ground game. In that sense, then, I'm going to see a website called Yang Daily 10. Phone banking, as of this current moment, is something that I'll have to hold off on. Help elect Andrew Yang for just 10 minutes a day. Get started. Most recent tasks. Okay. Okay. This is something I can do. Give up your go-to beverage for Yang. Oh, I think this is something where you donate, which I don't do for anybody, including starving African children, so I'm not starting for Yang. What I did do, though, is enroll for my free month with Audible and purchase Andrew Yang's Audible, The War on Normal People. Since I had two free, I threw one over to Jagmeet Singh, who was the candidate I would have voted for if not doing my strategic voting last year in the Canadian election. He is the NDP leader. Alright, what more can I do for Yang? Okay. Yang Daily 10. Submit a photo wearing your Yang merch. Math. M-A-T-H. I should have written that on a big sign. Make America Think Harder is what math stands for, and it's Yang's acronym. Another one I like of his is it's not left, it's not right, it's forward. Daily tasks. So Yang Daily 10 has a list of things that you can do to help Yang. Yang a cop. Jumping jacks for Yang. Okay. Time to get in shape and Yang people in the process. Your neighbors probably don't know much about your obsession, so your mission today is to walk outside your front door in full view of the neighborhood wearing full-on Yang gear and start doing jumping jacks while chanting UBI. Do this for at least 4 hours. Or because that's silly, you can phone bang. We've already been doing it all week between the skydiving, the cake baking, the date nights. What's one more day? Do it for Andrew, do it for Evelyn, do it for your kids, do it for our future. Okay. So I have been yanging Americans that I come across. I have American cousins. I have mentioned Andrew to all of them. I've also spoken to ex-American kink partners, Americans that I meet on travels, and I'm doing this because I think that piques their interest that a foreigner would be talking to them about their election, especially about a candidate who's what they call longer than long shot. Although I don't think he's a long shot anymore. I think there's a real hope for him, and I think for now this is all I can do for Yang. I was going to phone bank, but that's going to require some more tech setup. I might be back later on today to do that. Depends. As with most of my vlogs, I plan nothing, so sometimes shit goes differently than I would have liked or expected. But at the very least, I almost have a solid half an hour talking about Yang and why I support him, while also touching upon my experiences that have helped me come to the conclusion that Yang is probably one of the only opportunities we'll have in the next couple of years to completely shift our mentality on the shift that's coming. As a funny joke, I like to say we gotta get this life meaning thing in order. Yesterday, when I brought up Neil Strauss and the rules of the game, I brought up the fact that a lot of men's self-meaning and life meaning is fucking chicks and impregnating them. That's a biological and cultural thing. Genes and memes both go together to give life meaning. Okay, but what happens when we've now decoupled your dick from reproduction, and we've now even decoupled sex from your dick? I'll be real with you as a virgin, I'll say, even though I've not had the dick, I'm almost 99% certain that a machine out there does it better than your dick can. So when you're looking at a reality where a machine is going to do better than you in fucking, in taking orders, in driving trucks, in doing everything that we have built our life meaning around, you gotta go on a sojourn. You gotta go find yourself. That's a difficult process. If you'd like more tips on how to do that part, I have my own points of view in previous travel talks that I've done. I touch upon it in blogs all the time. But for now, I think I'm going to give my voice a bit of a rest because I've basically been talking all weekend, and I need some recovery time.